Hello everyone. This is Pod D Grade 5A's group's lesson plan. Our explanation begins with a total of 2-minute transition. In the transition, students will return to the main session of a Zoom class with screens and gallery format viewing. They will have cameras on and mics off. And then as for we begin when students are in the main session, teacher 1 will begin saying, now that we have read the articles and watched the videos, we will explain to each other what we have learned. And then we go off to our hook, which is a total of 4 minutes. And then students will remain in this main session of Zoom with the same protocol of screens on and microphones off. And teacher 3 will begin explaining the next steps. She will state before we begin with using your thumbs up or thumbs down reaction. Emojis on the bottom of your screen. Tell me how many of you enjoyed voicing out your opinions and or how many of you like hearing the opinions of others. Questions will also be typed in the chat by teacher 1, and this question or segment will last 1 minute. Teacher 3 will also give the cue, pause and think. When this cue is given, students will be aware that it's time for them to pause and think about their response to a question. This helps students be aware that they will have 1 minute to think about their response. Some students may not feel comfortable enough to share their feedback when it comes to voicing opinions. This is a barrier that we identified, and the solution to it was giving students reminders that their opinion is valid and important throughout assignments by giving them time was our solution. So if we give students time, it removes the barrier of feeling pressured, especially with students who have difficulties processing their ideas at quick rates. And then students, after the pause and think will be 1 minute. Students will respond with their emoji reactions, and they will have 1 minute to think and then 1 minute to respond. And then teacher 2 would continue on after the reactions and state, great responses everyone, thank you for using appropriate emojis. Well, for this class activity, we'll focus on expressing our opinions by explaining how we saw the different sides of slavery portrayed in the articles and videos we explored. And this statement would be 1 minute, and then we will go into our total time of 25 minutes for instructions, directions, or rules for this new activity that they will be doing for explanation. The activity that they will be doing for explanation has to be both teacher-centered, but more student-centered as well. And so the idea that we came up with was doing a Socratic Seminar, which is a formal discussion where students explain their critical thinking that relates to the topic of the lesson. So, teacher 1 will introduce the instructions, directions, or rules, and students will remain screens on but mics off, but the teachers will have their screens and microphones on. Teacher 1 would state to begin, the discussion we are going to be having is known as a Socratic Seminar. A Socratic Seminar is a discussion where all can voice out their opinions on the information they learned about today. We are doing a Socratic Seminar to discuss our main takeaways from the articles and videos. All students must respect each other's differing viewpoints. Teacher 1 will say this within a minute time frame, and then teacher 3 will continue on and take the spotlight and state the rules. Teacher 3 would state, here are the rules for our Socratic Seminar. Show a visual chart to students while explaining the rules. Teacher 3 will read them out loud. Having the teacher read out the instructions out loud to everyone will help auditive learners hearing as well. And during our Zoom session, we will have the CC, the closed captioning allowed for students to see and read along if they have trouble listening or they prefer reading along watching the video. And providing a visual chart of the rules will help visual learners retain information better. This was one of our barriers. Many students get bored by just listening to the teacher give instructions. So we came up with the idea to include a chart, a visual one with drawings and in a colorful format that's pleasing to the eye for students to be actually engage or remember the rules. And the rules follow: we will all respect each other while a peer is talking, and all the rules are based on positive reinforcement instead of negative reinforcement, which creates a safe, more comfortable environment for students. The second rule will be: we will be open-minded to the opinions and explanations of our peers. 3, if we disagree with our peers, we will express our opinion in a positive manner. 4, as a class, we will take turns speaking. 5, each student will have to speak at least once to share their response to a question or provide a comment to a peer's response. Each response given must be accompanied by an explanation that relates to the content or text resources we have learned. Once you have shared your responses with an explanation or a comment with an explanation, you will have to wait for 3 people to share a comment or response to a question before you can speak again. This will allow for the barrier of students who do not feel comfortable speaking out loud because they feel that they will not have a turn to speak. Our solution was allowing students to just speak once and then let 3 people go after them before they could speak again. This will ensure students taking turns and letting each other speak. And the list goes on. And then so teacher 2 will explain if they are misbehaving or not respecting others throughout the Socratic Seminar. They'll be giving questions in the chat privately for them to answer and reflect on. And this solves the barrier of students feeling left out or judged by other peers or embarrassed when they are misbehaving. So our solution was to give students in the chat private questions for them to answer, so for them to almost have like a refocus moment to reflect on their actions. And then we will go on to teacher 1 asking if there's any questions before they start the Socratic Seminar. Teacher 1 would type in the chat or have type that question in the chat for students who are unable to hear, or if their signal has been lost for the computer. Because within our class, our students from our demographics live in a very low income community where Wi-Fi signal or internet signal is not the best. So to ensure that they don't miss out on our verbal questions or verbal speaking, we will type in the question in the chat for them to see. And this will solve the issue with students feeling left out or students missing important information. And then we will also continue doing the pause and think after this question is asked for students to be aware of an opportunity to ask questions if they're confused before we start the session. And then we have students' potential questions. These are the questions we thought of students might ask once we ask this question. They would ask, will there be a quiz after the seminar? We stated that there will not be an assessment after the Socratic Seminar. You will be assessed based on your explanation when responding to the questions or comments on a peer's explanation or opinion. Our second imaginary student raised his hand icon or verbal question. So he was allowed to raise his hand with the icon, and he was verbally allowed to ask the question, which was, are we allowed to disagree with our classmates' opinions and explanations during the discussion? And then teacher 3 stated, answer the response, as in, yes, you are encouraged to voice out whether you agree or disagree with the explanation of one of your classmates. And those were the only 2 questions, and the response provided more information. But then we went down, after the questions, we started the Socratic Seminar. The Socratic Seminar activity consisted of 4 questions, and 6 students were assigned that question to be answered or to provide their explanation for their perspective. And then we had a time frame of 12 minutes per question. So students had a time frame for them to have to conversate and have a discussion with their peers. And we go on and continued on. So we provided one teacher asked them one question, the second teacher asked them the second question, and the third teacher asked them the third one. And once they provided their responses, we continued on into the closing session. And for the closing session, we just did a small summary of what they had accomplished and a mini transition into elaboration.